When you want to decrease sugar in your diet, start with your breakfast. If you're having a breakfast like that, you've pretty much maxed out on your sugar for the day already. So it's really important to look for foods that have less than 6 grams of sugar per 100 grams.
Today's conversation is with Rebecca Hirst. Rebecca is the founder of Glorious Wellness. She's the health coach to high flyers. She works with go-getters, game changers, and achievers who want to transform their energy, feel gloriously well, and kick some serious butt. After 20 brilliant years in marketing, many of which were at Coca-Cola, the irony is not lost, a senior Coke executive turned health coach. Rebecca has retrained and left her crazy big job to help other women to get amazing energy, brilliant brain power, and a happy, healthy body through her Glorious Wellness program. She's a TEDx speaker and regularly educates and entertains about how to find real-world wellness whilst juggling a million things. In today's podcast with Rebecca, we talk about our nasty relationship with sugar. Is it evil or not? But before we dive into it, I'd love to hear about your story and how you've changed your life pretty drastically from being in corporate and an industry who sells sugar to advising people and clients on what to eat and how to feel good.
Sure, I'd love to. It's absolutely true that I've had a radical career change. So I might as well just put it out there straight away. This is my skeleton in my closet. And every time I kind of do talks, I always just say, look, I need to tell you something. And the truth is, I used to work at Coca-Cola. That usually raises a few eyebrows, particularly if I'm giving a talk on nutrition. Because people say to me, well, how can you work in nutrition now and advise people on it when you used to sell sugary and sweetened soft drinks for a living? And I say to them, that's exactly why I talk about nutrition, because I know the truth about sugar. And the radical career change, the reset, began about 10 years ago now, when I had just changed jobs. And I've been in marketing and advertising most of my career until recently. And I just landed this huge job, this amazing new job at the Coca-Cola company. And for a marketeer, I was so excited about it. It's one of the biggest brands in the world. It's got an amazing culture of brand building, and it's got iconic advertising. And I thought this was the best thing ever. And it was for a while, until a couple of months into my new job, I had my second bout of really bad adult acne. I'd had it in my 20s, and this was in my early 30s. So starting this big sexy new job where I often had to present to people and stand in front of a room full of people. I looked after 13 countries across Europe. So I was always on my feet in front of people. Having a big flare-up of adult acne was the last thing that I wanted. And when I went to see my dermatologist, she said, I'm really sorry, your acne is back with a vengeance. We need to put you back on Roaccutane. So if anyone listening has had acne or has heard of Roaccutane, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, it's, for those who don't know, it's a really, really powerful anti-acne drug that is meant to eradicate acne once and for all when you've taken it. So I'd had it in my 20s, I'd taken it in my 20s. And then when my acne came back in my 30s, I was like, oh God, not again. But more than that, the Roaccutane has some really, really horrible side effects, like bloodshot eyes, cracked lips, nosebleeds, hot flushes. So not only was I thinking, oh my God, my acne's come back, I was thinking, Jesus, for the next 6 months, because that's how long I had to take it for, I'm going to be, standing in front of rooms full of people, presenting and talking about brand plans and whatnot, with the risk of having a nosebleed or a hot flush or my lips cracking. And I just couldn't figure out why it had come back. And lo and behold, I was referred to a nutritional therapist. Thank God I was, because she helped me understand, and I will be forever grateful to her, that what was triggering the acne and why it had come back was that I'd had an undiagnosed allergy to cow's milk. And I'd been having having my daily cappuccino. I'd be having, butter and cheese and not thinking anything of it. And it was really reacting badly with my skin. So we worked together for about 18 months, and she helped me to deal with the side effects of Accutane, and also to learn how to eat to support my body and to support my skin. And that was the start of a long transformation, to heal my body and my skin and to get well. But also, it intrigued me. I'd never really thought about this really strong connection between what we put in our body. And I was pretty educated about food and quite healthy, and I went to the gym and I ran every day and all that kind of thing. But I didn't really understand that this type of allergic reaction or intolerance could trigger such big reactions. So I started testing things out on myself to see what would happen and how my skin would react and how I felt. And eventually, several years later, I thought, I love this. I could turn into a proper nutrition nerd. And I thought I was reading nutrition books like, people read novels, and listening to every podcast I could get my hands on related to nutrition and reading about it left, right, and center. And I really, really felt that this is one of my passions, my kind of late discovered passions in life. And I decided to study it. So I had this crazy point in my life where day to day I was marketing Coca-Cola across 13 countries and managing its sponsorship of the FIFA World Cup and the Olympics and things, which again always raises a few eyebrows. People are like, why is Coca-Cola doing sport? But anyway, that's a whole different conversation. And then at night time and on my commute into London every day, I was studying nutrition. So for a couple of years, it was a real brain stretch to get it to compute, or not even compute, but to do those two things in parallel. And that was the start point of resetting my career and transitioning out of, a world that I'd sort of fallen out of love with, and a new lifestyle before I set up Glorious Wellness.
Wow, what a journey and an amazing shift. When you studied nutrition, did you learn about sugar and its effects and benefits and how it's part of our daily foods these days?
Oh, we learnt tons about it, and I already had a big interest in it because, as you can imagine, working at Coca-Cola, there's a lot of pressure from the media and from I guess, what's the word, like pressure groups and all sorts of organisations that Coca-Cola should be leading the way in helping the nation and the country and the world get healthier. So I'd heard sort of from both sides, from nutrition school, what the science behind sugar is, and listening to medics like Professor, don't mean that, Professor Lustig, who was really one of the early advocates of an anti-sugar stance. So I was very aware of him from working at Coca-Cola as someone who was speaking very vocally and very loudly about the impact of sugar on children. He's a pediatric oncologist in the US. So it was interesting to hear that side of the story whilst I was at Coke. And then from a nutrition school perspective, understanding the science behind what sugar does to the body. So we learned tons about it, and I still find it really fascinating because with nutrition, there are topics that ebb and flow, like veganism or clean eating or green or alkaline. But there's one thing that hasn't seemed to have waned over the past couple of years, and that's the debate about sugar. So it's still a really hot topic, and one that I speak about a lot, and I also get a lot of questions on. So it's clearly something that people still need to understand, and there's a lot of confusion about it. So, yeah.
Yes, there's definitely confusion about it. And that's why it's generating loads of questions. Do you see it as an actual issue and a common one when helping people and amongst your clients? And when they consult you, what do you advise exactly?
I see it as an issue, a very common issue. I would say 70% of my client base is female. And for most of the women I coach, sugar is an issue. So it's often an issue in terms of afternoon munchies, that 3 o'clock energy dip. Had one client who said to me, every single day at 3 o'clock. She runs her own business. She's got a really successful business. She's an entrepreneur. She would every single day have to go and get a supersized bar of chocolate from the kind of local shop. Every single day. I can't, in her words, she couldn't function without it. And a big part of coaching her was A, finding alternatives, but B, finding a different way to recharge her energy than a big sugar fix in the afternoon. So I see it as, the other thing is I work with women and men who are tired. They run businesses, they are juggling, they're going a million miles an hour, they're traveling, all of that kind of thing that we all deal with, and they are tired. So falling back on caffeine and sugar, and sometimes white carbohydrates that comes into the mix, is a way of propping up their energy levels. So I would say that sugar comes up in each and every consultation that I first have with a client. Yeah, every single one. There's probably, of the last 12 months, there's probably one client out of 50 who's not had some form of addiction to sugar. It's everywhere. Yeah, it's really common.
When it becomes a daily habit like that, would you say it's somehow like an addiction, or is that too much of a strong word? I mean, can we be addicted to sugar?
Sugar. Yeah, we can. That's a really good question. When we eat sugar, it lights up a part of our brain like fireworks. So there's a receptor in the middle of our brain that responds really brightly. If you could imagine like a picture of fireworks, when you have sugar, that piece of your brain lights up. And it likes that. The brain's like, whoa. So the more that we feed it, the more it looks for it. And the other thing that I learned when I was looking into gut health, my TED talk was on gut health, and I was researching it, and I didn't realize that our guts, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria. I don't really like good and bad as terminology, but if we keep it really simple, and if we keep feeding the bad bacteria, and the bad bacteria is the stuff that makes us feel tired and makes our guts feel funny, and doesn't help us have good energy and good sleep and good immunity. If we're overrun with bad bacteria, those bacteria often are the types of microorganisms that crave sugar. So part of getting over a sugar addiction is resetting our gut health so it's full of really good, healthy, helpful bacteria, gut bacteria. And that in itself helps us get over our cravings, because our guts can keep us addicted to sugar. So yeah, it is an addiction. It's also a habit, and that they are different things, I think. Having that reaching for sugary breakfast cereal or sugar in your coffee or a 3 o'clock pick-me-up is often a habit. And sometimes it's harder to get our heads around rewiring that habit than it is just to sort of see sugar for what it is.
Yeah, another thing is that it's difficult to know how much sugar we eat within a day. How do I know what are the good and bad sugars? Okay, we know about white sugar to avoid in our coffee, but how much sugar there is in my food or in my drink, it's hard to know. How to know that?
It's something that infuriates me. That, like you say, if there's a cookie or a bar of chocolate or a red Coke or whatever it may be, a muffin, we know, we're intelligent men and women. We know that is full of sugar and it's not really doing us any favors. We know that. Being aware of that and wanting to do something about it is an amazing first step. And transitioning out of that habit takes us about 21 days 21 days to create a new habit of going for something else instead. And that could be a peppermint tea, or it could be, I love sliced up green apple with some peanut butter on it because it's naturally quite sweet. Or a walk around the block if you're at your desk, and actually sometimes at 3 or 4 o'clock, cookie is a sign of boredom and tiredness rather than hunger. So there's a I guess it's practicing doing something else at 4 o'clock if that's your thing, than going for the cookie or the muffin at 4 every day. The thing that infuriates me and it drives me absolutely crazy is where there's lots of sugar in things that we have been led to believe are healthy. And I say this as a marketeer. I've been in advertising for 20 odd years, and I know all the tricks. I know all of the tricks about, particularly, like around breakfast cereals, the words like all natural, no added sugar, no, what's one of the words? No processed sugar. These are organic. I'm not saying organic's good or bad. It's just that these words make us think often that something is better for us than it is. So one of the things I say to clients, and when I'm talking on this topic, is when you want to decrease sugar in your diet, start with your breakfast. Because the average European breakfast is, let's say, it's a glass of orange juice, it might be some cereal, it might be some banana or blueberries, or it may be toast with jam or bread and jam. And so by the time you get to the end of that, you've probably had your full quota of sugar. If you listen to NHS guidelines, which is now 5 teaspoons a day maximum, if you're having a breakfast like that, you pretty much maxed out on your sugar for the day already. And that's just, and yogurt, that's the other thing that drives me crazy. A lot of yogurts have loads of added sugar, even if they're low fat, organic, natural, blah, 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 all marketing words. They're packed full of sugar. And how do you know if it's high sugar or not? Well, I have one rule, and that is when you look on the packets of sides of cereal or cookies or crackers or whatever it may be, yogurt, the number that we need to look for is there's a line that says carbohydrates of which sugar. And that of which sugar number needs to be less than 6 grams per 100 grams, or 6 grams per 100 ml if it's juice or smoothie or whatever. And if it's higher than 6 grams per 100 grams, that is going to give you a sugar spike. And we've all heard that sugar spikes are what cause us to be tired later in the morning, that leave us wanting to have something else, at 10 o'clock rather than going on through to lunch and being satisfied. They're what give us this big surge of energy and then a big dip. So to avoid those big peaks and troughs, it's really important to look for foods that have less than 6 grams of sugar per 100 grams. And ignore, again, as a marketeer, ignore the column that says per serving, because those serving sizes are for, I don't know who they're for, but if I pour out some, cornflakes or whatever, something like that, the serving size is minuscule, the one that they talk about on the side of the box. And I, for one, would definitely pour out at least probably twice what they think is a serving size. So I always look for the per 100 grams, because it means that you can keep it consistent across all the products that you look at, kind of comparing apples with apples. So you'll find that, say, for breakfast, things like any kind of cereal, other than maybe 1 or 2 of them, have loads more sugar.
Okay, so we should look at labels more and start with our breakfast cereals, for example. Does this include granola too? I love granola, and apparently it's packed with sugar. Is that right?
Absolutely, and I'm quite obsessed by granola in a good way, because you've probably seen on my blog there's at least 4 or 5 granola recipes, because again it drove me absolutely insane that these granolas were being marketed as healthy, and the amount of honey or brown sugar or date syrup or agave sugar or whatever else was added to them was way too high. Some of them I looked at had like 20 grams per 100 grams, and it's too high. And I decided that I was going to do something about it and start making my own. And now every couple of weeks I'll try a different granola recipe. They are really, really easy to make yourself. You need oats, you need seeds, some nuts, maybe some cinnamon. I use, for a big box of it, maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons of honey in the whole thing, just to sweeten it and make it crunchy. And bake it in the oven. I use olive oil or coconut oil to make it crunchy. It's so easy to make yourself, and you know exactly how much sweetener or honey or whatever has gone into it. And I would just say avoid any shop bought granola that has more than 6 grams. And the other watch out. So you get me talking on the topic of granola, and I probably wouldn't stop. It's like obsessed by it. The other thing that drives me insane is dried fruit. What happens when it's dried is that all of the water is taken out of it, obviously, and you have a form of fruit and it's most concentrated. So we are meant to eat fruit from the tree, I think. So an apple or a banana or an orange. When you dry that grape into a raisin, or you dry the apricots, you're really condensing the sugars. And whilst a few of them, literally just a couple of apricots or a couple of figs, dried figs, would be a good thing, most of us don't stop there. We eat too many of them in one go. So it's natural sugar, but our body still sees it as sugar, and it's still going to give us a sugar spike, even though the fruits have fiber in them, the dried fruits. It's still leading to a big sugar spike if there's too many of them in there. So I make all my granolas without any dried fruit in them. And if when you have your breakfast, you want some of your own homemade granola with some natural yogurt, and then you put on some sliced banana or a few blueberries, again, that's a good balance because you're getting the beautiful vitamins and fiber and antioxidants, but you're not having a really condensed, dense form of dried fruit where the sugars are really potent.
Okay, that makes sense. We should always choose natural sugars, like the dried fruits. They are amazing. However, we need to be very careful with the portions we're having because they're packed with sugar, so small portions are best.
So the things that I hear most about at the moment are honey, maple syrup, agave, coconut sugar, coconut nectar. What else? I've probably forgotten some. Rice malt syrup. There's probably date syrup. Maple, honey. So these are all natural sugars. So is white table sugar. So this might sound controversial, but if you take white table sugar that you get in a big bag from the supermarket, that is either sugar cane or sugar beet that's been cleaned and processed and dried and kind of created into a sugary powder. They're all natural to a certain degree. Now, if you read all the headlines in the press at the moment, you would believe that having maple or agave or honey or coconut syrup is better for you than normal white processed sugar. So what I'm going to say is probably a bit controversial. However, when we eat sugar, doesn't matter what form it takes really, we still get a sugar spike. So we need to be mindful of the fact that all of these things, whilst they're delicious and sweet, still have an impact on our insulin and our blood sugar levels. So my advice to all of my clients is minimize all sweeteners. So even just because something's got date syrup in it or coconut syrup doesn't necessarily make it good for you. It's still a treat. So whenever you have something that's sweet, have it as a treat, not as an everyday thing.
Okay, got it. So not every day, only as a treat, and all natural. And what about honey?
Yeah, don't just because it says it's all natural. Honey's beautiful. I love it. I have a little bit of it here and there, but I don't have much of it because it's still really, really sweet. The other thing I'm going to make things a bit more complicated, but then try and uncomplicate them, is there's a difference in the impact on our bodies of fructose and glucose. So to keep it really simple, kind of in science terms, fructose is metabolized by the liver. And if we have too much fructose, it gets converted very quickly into fat cells. So while we're seeing an increase across the world in obesity, also heart disease and cancer and all those sorts of things, one of the things that doesn't help us is having too much fructose in our diet. And there's lots of types of sugar, but again, I'm not going to go into too much, otherwise we'll be here all day. The other type of sugar that's in most of the ones that we buy most frequently is glucose. Now, glucose will also lead to a sugar spike like fructose will, but it's metabolized by the body differently. It's used more readily as energy and burnt off rather than metabolized by the liver and stored as fat cells. So something that has had a lot of press and airtime recently has been sweeteners that are glucose based, not fructose based. So the only thing that you need to know if you're even, I guess, thinking about this topic of glucose fructose is there's one type of sweetener that you can buy that is 100% glucose, and that is either a glucose syrup or it's rice malt syrup, which is 100% glucose. Most others have got a combination of fructose and glucose. So that's just something we could talk for an hour on that topic alone. It's something to be aware of. And if you're not having much sweeteners in your diet or much sugar in your diet, I would say don't worry too much about the split between fructose and glucose. Just have a little bit of honey or a little bit of maple syrup. Don't have sugar in your breakfast cereal. Start to think about having something else if you need an afternoon pick-me-up. And when you do have something sweet, really have it as a treat, like a beautiful brownie or a beautiful dessert if you go out for dinner, or a piece of chocolate cake for your birthday. Have the really good stuff and enjoy every mouthful of it. Just don't make it a daily habit that's not helping you, that's not serving you nutritionally.
Okay, it sounds like we have to really minimize our sugar intake. What do you think about having a sugar-free diet? Do you think we should go for a sugar-free diet, or is that too radical?
Good question. So my ethos, so the ethos of Glorious Wellness, is firmly rooted in the real world. And I often talk about real world wellness. What do I mean by that? It means that 80% of the time we eat well, crunchy, colourful, full of antioxidants, vegetables, fruit, some nuts, some fish, all of those good things, some good oils. So most of the time we center our diet around that. And then 20% of the time we give ourselves the flexibility and freedom to enjoy the things that we really enjoy, whether that is a glass of champagne or some, potato chips, or it's a good steak, or it's a good slice of chocolate cake. Your 20% will be different to my 20%. What I found works best for all my clients who, again, have families and travel, and they go out to dinner in London, or they're, entertaining clients or whatever. It would be impossible if I said to them, you will never touch sugar again, and they'd probably never come back to see me. So what we do is they roll their eyes and go, oh God, she's too strict. So I say to them, choose when you have it. You don't need it every single meal. You don't need it every single day. You can get a little bit of natural sweetness from 1 or 2 pieces of fruit a day. We don't need more fruit than that. Again, NHS guidelines are we should be eating 7 pieces of fruit and vegetables a day. And I always say to clients that should be 5 vegetables and 2 fruit. One woman said to me, I have 4 bananas a day. And I was like, you what? You need to mix that up a bit, lady. So I never say to my clients, you must follow a sugar-free diet. But what we do is practice, not having it all the time, having alternatives, decreasing the sweet tooth, because we do have palate changes over a couple of weeks, and just having it now and again if you really love it. Have a teeny bit of the really good stuff, the really good chocolate, or the really good patisserie, or the really good whatever, and enjoy it.
And what's your advice on alcohol? I know we briefly mentioned it earlier, and I know it's full of sugar.
Mm-hmm. It sure is. I guess the amount of sugar depends on what it is. So the most sugary things are those with mixers, like cocktails that have got fruit juices and syrups and all those kinds of things in. So they are not great for us just in terms of, again, the sugar spike. So I would, if you really want some alcohol, you want to enjoy a drink, have a beautiful glass of red wine, or have a glass of champagne, or a gin and tonic. So my advice on alcohol is to steer away from the sugary cocktails. So those that have got like loads of fruit juice and syrups and things in them. and go instead for something like a really good glass of red wine. So that's one of the lowest levels of sugar in terms of alcoholic drinks, or something that is mixed with soda. So a lot of my clients will have vodka, lime, and soda, or something like that, or even elderflower and soda. That's not got alcohol in it, but it's a really lovely drink if you're going out. Or one of my favorites is a glass or two of really good champagne. So it's part of that 80-20 thing again, that it's not completely off limits if it's something that you enjoy and it's part of your 20. It's about changing our relationship to seeing it as something that we enjoy as a treat, and then really enjoying it and not feeling guilty about it, and making good choices.
Yes, absolutely. That's great advice. Now, if we move on to the consequences of our sugar intake, we often know about the long-term effects, and that is linked to disease. The World Health Organization said on many, many occasions that it can lead to cancer, obesity, heart strokes, and diabetes. But we never really speak about the small daily effects that we don't even know, but we experience, such as fatigue.
It's a very good question, and we've been led to believe that sugar is benign and it's a nice, sweet little treat, and it's not going to hurt you, and you should just, it's fine. And that's what the marketeers would have us believe in, and it's not always true, because in addition to what you just talked about, obesity, heart disease, cancer, in those diseases which are serious, we've also, or I've seen studies recently that have linked sugar consumption to foggy brain. So one of the things I work with clients on is having amazing energy and good concentration so they can perform really well at work and in their businesses and in all aspects of their life. And sugar can detract from our brain power and give us foggy brain, sometimes headaches. It can also, this idea of putting on fat around your middle, so that, putting it on your stomach is linked to sugar consumption, because of the way that fructose in particular is metabolized and then stored by the body. It can also, and this is, I guess, coming back to what we talked about right at the beginning around skin issues. If you suffer from acne or pink sort of inflamed skin, or things like eczema or dermatitis, most skin issues have at their heart some level of inflammation, and sugar creates inflammation in the body. We get a big rise in cortisol and adrenaline, as well as other reactions in the body. So if you are worried about your skin, for example, having a low sugar diet, not having too much added sweeteners of any kind, and just keeping it to a bit of fruit, a bit of honey here and there, that's it, you'll probably find that your skin improves, and you'll get more of a glow. The same with decrease in alcohol, but our skin looks so much brighter and clearer when we're not having lots of added sugar. And the other thing that I learned, and I had to kind of research it again, I was like, this can't be true, is that sugar cells, when we digest them, bind to collagen in the body, and the collagen stiffens when sugar has attached to it. And what that means is our skin becomes stiffer, which means that it becomes more susceptible to becoming dull, and we get lines, and it takes away like the elasticity in our skin. So again, if you want to have, no point spending loads of money on creams and facials and things if you're eating loads of sugar, because your skin is being stiffened and not really helped by having too much sugar in your diet. So it impacts so many more things than we ever knew about. If you currently have lots of sugar in your diet and you strip it right back, you will find after a period of adjustment where you probably feel like, ugh, for a little while, 3-4 days later, you'll come out of it and go, oh my God, my energy is so much better. As long as, and the number one thing in terms of energy that I see this all the time is making sure you drink enough water. So more than anything, sugar's really important. Keep it to a minimum, but more important is to stay really well hydrated.
Yes, very true. My last question now, as we need to wrap up, is about your self-care philosophy and what's your best tip to improve our well-being?
Okay. The Glorious Wellness method is about food and also things that surround food. What do I mean by that? So there's 5 pillars of what I teach and what I speak about and what I coach on. The first pillar is clean up. Second is crowd out. Third is move more. Fourth is rest and restore. And number 5, I call it reset mindset. So cleaning up is about decreasing, not necessarily minimizing, the things in our diet that we instinctively know aren't doing us any favors. Too much caffeine, too much alcohol, too much sugar, too much white carbohydrate, too many ready meals, any of those things. So if we decrease those and start to clean up our diet, we then naturally move on to the second thing, which is crowd out. Now, crowd out is the opposite to diets. I hate diets. I hate that word. I hate the idea of a regime and rules and calorie counting. I don't do it. I say to my clients, if you fill your plate with color and crunch and texture and you feast with your eyes and it looks amazing, there's less room for the beige stuff. And it's the beige, the white bread, the white pasta, the biscuits, those sorts of things. They don't help us nutritionally. They don't help us to feel gloriously well. So if you clean up, you naturally start to crowd out with good stuff. And the third one was move more. We all lead lives that are too sedentary. Office, computer, commuting. So move your body every day if you can in a way that you like doing. It might be walking. It might be dancing around the lounge. It might be, swimming. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. Your body needs to move to be supple and lubricated, and your joints to be happy, and for your energy to lift. So move more. Number 4, most of the people I work with are really lacking in rest and recharging their batteries. And I'm the same. I have to really force myself to sit and do nothing. It's so important. We lead really busy, full-on, switched-on lives. So having these pockets, not necessarily, 2 weeks on holiday, I'm not always talking about that, but I mean the daily things, like 15 minutes in a bath at the end of the day before you put your pajamas on, or a book before you go to bed with some chamomile tea, or a walk in the park at lunchtime. The little things that help just keep our energy topped up each and every single day. Being outside, it's one of my things. I love it. And the final one is, you mentioned it earlier around being aware of things that aren't necessarily helping us. So reset mindset is about asking ourselves the question, what is it that I need to let go of so that I can feel more gloriously well? Or what do I need to embrace so that I can feel more gloriously well? And it may be things like more water, so that your pee is really clear. I always talk about champagne pee. Your pee needs to be as clear as champagne, otherwise you are dehydrated. So if it's in Chardonnay territory, we're dehydrated. So you might need more water, you might need more rest. So ask yourself the question, what is it that my body needs? And often our bodies are amazingly intelligent. Our guts will tell us what they need and our body will tell us what it needs. So tune into that. And if you do a bit of all of those things, you'll be well on the way to feeling gloriously well.
Thank you to Rebecca for sharing her tips with us today. For more of her advice, one-to-one coaching, or delicious recipes, then head over to her website at gloriouswellness.com. Now, we want to hear from you. If you have any questions or any guests that you recommend, then send me an email. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for a new episode next week.